Family Guy is the kind of show that never really stays on the surface. On first watch, it's loud, chaotic, and relentlessly absurd, but beneath the cutaway gags and outrageous jokes lies one of the most densely packed animated series ever made. The writers didn't just fill episodes with humor, they filled them with hidden details, background jokes, obscure references, and long-running secrets that most viewers never notice, even after multiple rewatches. This is a show designed to reward obsession, and the deeper you look, the more layers reveal themselves. One of the most famous hidden elements in Family Guy is how often the show quietly breaks its own reality without drawing attention to it. Characters frequently acknowledge they're in a TV show, but not always in obvious fourth-wall-breaking jokes. Sometimes it's subtle, like background characters repeating the same animation loop across multiple seasons, implying they are literally trapped inside reused frames. Other times, it's props that exist only because the animators reused assets from previous episodes, creating unintentional continuity that hardcore fans later interpreted as intentional lore. The Griffin house itself is full of Easter eggs that most people never notice. The staircase angle changes slightly depending on what the joke requires, and the living room layout subtly shifts between episodes. While this began as an animation shortcut, it later became a deliberate running gag. In some episodes, the family will reference rooms that don't exist in the house's standard layout, quietly mocking the inconsistency without explaining it. The show treats its own animation flaws as part of the joke, trusting the audience to either notice or not care. Stewie Griffin alone might contain more hidden references than most entire shows. His dialogue is packed with obscure historical, literary, and pop culture references that often go over viewers' heads. Many of his insults and monologues reference British aristocracy, obscure military terminology, or outdated scientific theories. This is intentional. The writers often gave Stewie lines specifically designed to sound intelligent even if the audience didn't fully understand them, creating humor through tone rather than comprehension. Stewie's accent itself is an Easter egg. His vaguely British pronunciation isn't random. Early production notes reveal that his voice was inspired by classic Hollywood villains and old transatlantic accents, giving him an air of sophistication that clashes with his age. Over time, the show leaned into this contradiction, using it to sneak in references to British television, Shakespeare, and even obscure BBC programming that only a small percentage of viewers would recognize. Brian Griffin's character arc is another treasure trove of obscure trivia. In early seasons, Brian was written as the voice of reason, but as the series progressed, he slowly became more hypocritical, arrogant, and self-serving. This wasn't accidental character decay. Writers have openly admitted they exaggerated Brian's flaws to parody a specific type of pseudo-intellectual personality. Many of Brian's political or philosophical rants directly mirror real op-eds, interviews, or celebrity statements lightly disguised for animation. Family Guy also hides jokes in plain sight through background text. Newspaper headlines, book titles, license plates, and store signs often contain jokes that are never spoken aloud. These are frequent references to real-world controversies, canceled celebrities, or inside jokes among the writing staff. Some signs even reference episodes that hadn't aired yet at the time, creating strange moments of accidental foreshadowing when fans later caught them. Cutaway gags are where the show becomes truly unhinged with its references. Some cutaways exist solely to reference forgotten commercials, obscure TV pilots, or one-off pop culture moments from decades ago. These jokes aren't designed to land for everyone. They're designed to land perfectly for a very specific person. That specificity is part of Family Guy's identity. If you don't get the reference, the randomness becomes the joke. If you do get it, it feels like the show is speaking directly to you. One of the most obscure running Easter eggs involves reused voice actors. Family Guy frequently casts the same voice actor for dozens of minor characters, often in the same episode. Sometimes the show leans into this by giving those characters similar personalities or speech patterns, quietly acknowledging the reuse without explaining it. Hardcore fans have compiled entire databases tracking which characters share voices, turning what started as a budget necessity into a fandom obsession. The show's relationship with censorship also created hidden jokes. Network standards often force the writers to censor specific words or scenes, but instead of simply removing them, the writers would replace censored content with absurdly specific alternatives. These replacements often became funnier than the original joke, and in some cases, the censored version became the canonical version of the gag. On DVD releases, the uncensored versions reveal how much thought went into working around restrictions. Family Guy's long-running feud with other shows, especially The Simpsons, is filled with obscure references. While the rivalry is mostly playful, the writers have hidden subtle jabs in background details, dialogue phrasing, and even animation timing. Certain jokes mirror Simpsons jokes almost beat for beat, but with deliberate changes meant to parody the original structure. These are less insults and more meta-commentary on animated sitcom tropes. Music is another layer most viewers overlook. The show uses a massive library of licensed music, but many songs are chosen for very specific reasons beyond humor. Lyrics often mirror the emotional subtext of a scene, even when the song choice seems random. In some cases, songs reference earlier episodes or foreshadow upcoming plot points. The effort put into musical selection is far deeper than most animated comedies attempt. There are also jokes that were never meant to be noticed at all. Animation errors, unfinished frames, and misplaced characters occasionally slip into episodes. Instead of correcting these mistakes, later episodes sometimes reference them indirectly, turning production flaws into retroactive Easter eggs. This self-awareness blurs the line between intentional and accidental humor, making it nearly impossible to tell what was planned and what was embraced after the fact. Family Guy's timeline is intentionally inconsistent, but there are hidden patterns. Characters age when the joke demands it and remain frozen otherwise. Certain historical events are acknowledged while others are ignored. This selective continuity allows the writers to reset the world whenever necessary, but observant fans have noticed subtle callbacks that suggest some events are remembered while others are erased. It's a chaotic continuity system, but not a careless one. Even the opening credits hide trivia. Background dancers change subtly across seasons, and some of their movements reference previous episodes. Occasionally, characters who shouldn't exist in the current timeline appear briefly, creating blink-and-you-miss-it cameos. These moments are never addressed, rewarding viewers who obsessively rewatch the intro. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Family Guy's Easter eggs is how many of them are meant for the writers themselves. Inside jokes referencing failed pitches, canceled scripts, or rejected network notes occasionally slip into episodes. These jokes aren't for the audience at all. They're a quiet form of rebellion, a way for the creative team to leave their fingerprints behind. Over the years, fans have uncovered jokes that took over a decade to fully understand, because the reference only became relevant years later. A throwaway line suddenly gains new meaning when a celebrity scandal breaks. A background poster becomes ironic after a cultural shift. Family Guy unintentionally documents pop culture in real time, freezing moments that later feel surreal. The show's willingness to offend also hides deeper satire. Many jokes that appear purely shocking are actually layered critiques of media sensationalism, celebrity worship, or social hypocrisy. The humor is intentionally exaggerated to expose absurdity, but without explanation. The show trusts viewers to either get it or dismiss it as nonsense, and that ambiguity is part of its appeal. At its core, Family Guy isn't just a comedy, it's a dense archive of cultural noise, filtered through sarcasm, absurdity, and intentional chaos. Every episode is packed with more information than can be processed in one viewing. That's why fans keep coming back. There's always something new to catch, something hidden in the background, or something that suddenly makes sense years later. Another fascinating layer of Family Guy's hidden depth lies in how the writers reuse and reinterpret their own jokes across seasons. Certain punchlines appear once in an obvious form, then quietly resurface years later as background gags or altered references. These callbacks are often so subtle that even dedicated fans miss them unless they're actively looking. A joke that once dominated an entire cutaway might later appear as a single line of text on a billboard or a passing comment from a background character, creating a sense of internal recycling that rewards long-term viewers. The show also plays heavily with forgotten celebrities and cultural figures. many of whom were already obscure even at the time the episodes aired. Family Guy has a habit of resurrecting names that mainstream media has long abandoned, turning them into punchlines without explanation. This creates a strange time capsule effect. Years later, viewers stumble upon these references and discover entire corners of pop culture they never knew existed. In this way, Family Guy functions almost like a chaotic encyclopedia of cultural obscurity. Another obscure trivia point involves how often the show deliberately misleads the audience. Some cutaways are structured to feel like setups for familiar jokes, only to veer sharply into something completely unrelated. This isn't laziness or randomness, it's a parody of joke structure itself. By denying expected punchlines, the show trains viewers not to rely on conventional comedy rhythms. The confusion becomes a joke, and over time, this unpredictability becomes part of the show's signature style. Family Guy's use of violence also hides layers of satire that are easy to overlook. Over-the-top injuries, extended fight scenes, and exaggerated pain are rarely about shock alone. They often mirror how violence is treated casually in other media. By pushing it to absurd extremes, the show exposes how desensitized audiences have become. The infamous chicken fights, for example, aren't just random chaos. They're a deliberate mockery of action movie tropes, dragged out far beyond comfort to highlight their inherent absurdity. The writers also sneak in commentary about animation itself. Characters sometimes move in intentionally stiff or exaggerated ways that resemble outdated animation techniques. These moments quietly reference older cartoons, early television animation, or even cheap animation shortcuts from the past. To casual viewers, these moments feel off. To animation enthusiasts, they're deliberate nods to the medium's history. Even character names hide trivia. Many one-off characters are named after crew members, writers' friends, or obscure public figures. These names pass unnoticed by most viewers, but they serve as personal signatures left behind by the creative team. In some cases, entire jokes are built around names that only make sense to people inside the industry, transforming the show into a layered conversation between creators and audience. Family Guy also has a long tradition of referencing failed or canceled projects. Jokes about terrible movies, forgotten TV pilots, or one-season wonders often come from first-hand experience. Several writers previously worked on shows that were quickly canceled, and these experiences quietly inform the bitterness or cynicism behind certain jokes. What sounds like random mockery is often deeply personal industry commentary disguised as humor. Another obscure detail is how often the show intentionally breaks emotional continuity. A character may experience a dramatic moment only to completely forget it seconds later. This isn't always played for laughs. Sometimes it's a deliberate commentary on how sitcoms reset emotional stakes to maintain endless storytelling. Family Guy exaggerates this reset to an extreme, exposing the artificial nature of serialized television without ever explaining it outright. The show's international references are also deeper than they appear. Beyond obvious jokes about foreign countries, Family Guy occasionally references international commercials, television formats, or cultural habits that most American viewers wouldn't recognize. These references slip by unnoticed, but they reflect the diverse backgrounds of the writing staff and their exposure to global media. It's another example of how the show doesn't tailor itself exclusively to mass understanding. Even silence is used as an Easter egg. Awkward pauses, extended still frames, or moments where nothing happens are often intentional. These pauses parody dramatic tension, awkward social interactions, or the expectation that a joke must always fill space. By refusing to rush, Family Guy creates discomfort that becomes comedic in its own right. Family Guy's obsession with repetition is another hidden technique. Certain phrases, sounds, or gestures are repeated so often that they lose meaning, then suddenly regain it in a new context. This repetition mirrors how catchphrases form and decay in pop culture. The show both creates and dismantles its own memes, sometimes within the same season. The real Easter egg of Family Guy is the show itself. It rewards attention, curiosity, and a willingness to look past the obvious joke. Whether it's a background sign, a reused animation, a buried reference, or a line that only makes sense if you've seen a forgotten commercial from the 90s, the show constantly invites viewers to engage deeper. And once you start noticing these hidden layers, it becomes impossible to watch Family Guy the same way again. What once felt random starts to feel intentional. What seemed lazy becomes clever. What looked chaotic reveals structure beneath the madness. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden details and obscure trivia, there are countless more buried across the series waiting to be found. Rewatch an episode, slow it down, and pay attention to what's happening behind the main joke. You might be surprised by how much the show has been quietly hiding all along.